Good evening and welcome to the keynote address for the 13th Annual U Lead Conference. My name is Charles Swin and I am the Vice President of Member Education and Development for the Interfraternity Council. The U Lead Conference is a cross-campus collaboration involving planning and financial contributions from many different partners, some of which are with us today. Fraternity and Sorority Life, Honors Student Body, Kearney International Center, Mavericks Involvement Team, Residence Hall Association, Student Events Team, and Student Government. Tonight's ULEAD schedule will feature our 3 keynote speakers, followed by a networking social and appetizer buffet. The buffet will be located down the hall in the Student Activities Office. Following the networking social, there will be 3 breakout sessions to choose from. Tomorrow evening, there will be 3 rounds of breakout sessions beginning at 5:30. Please check out the schedule on Mav Life to choose which sessions may be best for you. Again, thank you for joining us today. We ask that all attendees be sure to check in on to this event using the QR code on the table outside or near both entrances. You'll be prompted to log into Mav Life if you aren't already. At the conclusion of this event, you'll receive a survey. Completing the survey is the way to be officially checked in and to receive an entry into our drawing for gift cards for the Maverick School Bookstore. If you are attending any sessions for class extra credit or for RSO requirement, checking in and completing the survey in the way to ensure that your attendance is recorded. Now please welcome Ben Livingston, a member of Student Government, on stage.
Thank you. Let's give Charlie another round of applause, stepping up and speaking for us. So this year's theme for the ULE conference is authenticity, accountability, and achievement. During the conference, we are helping students explore ways to engage with the university community while in college and to find ways to develop themselves as leaders. We are also hopeful that student organization leaders on campus can find ways that their groups are able to better engage with and recruit prospective members. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker who will cover our first A, authenticity. Mr. Brett Anderson serves as Chief Executive Officer of Ebenezer Senior Living and President of Senior Services for Fairview, where he leads Minnesota's largest senior living provider encompassing more than 120 communities across 6 states. In addition to his housing and care responsibilities, he oversees value-based care programs serving more than 4,500 members. Anderson brings extensive experience in healthcare leadership and senior living/real estate operations with a focus on strategic growth, innovative care delivery and housing models, and sustainable partnerships. He's currently pursuing a PhD in management and public service where his research examines the impact of nursing home reimbursement policies on financial performance and sustainability. Let's give a round of applause.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And as I was talking with John before, I think it's been 15 years since I've been in this room. And time goes fast. And never thought that I'd be where I'm at today and get the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about how I view authenticity. And I would say I'm still early in my career. I know maybe the current student's going to debate that as I'm 15 years out. But really throughout my career, and I still consider it early, I said I don't quite know exactly what I want to do, and I still grow up, and that's okay. But I had to move really fast, and I'll tell you about that. But I had different promotions. I owned a business. I had new titles. I got into these bigger meetings. And what I learned is that, people wanted to know me. And I thought I was giving them what they needed. I was making decisions. I was driving results. I was giving them fast answers. But what I didn't realize was that I was letting them see what I did, not necessarily who I was. And I thought that leadership was really about being polished. And it turns out what I've learned is that people follow you when they believe that you're real. And so that's what I want to talk with you about today is authenticity, how I view authenticity, how I think as you finish your career at MSU and you go out and start your career, how you can learn some of the lessons I've learned the hard way to bring you into the workplace with some authenticity and how it can shape your own journey. So to me, authenticity is the alignment between your values, your actions, and how you show up, even when it's really uncomfortable. And I think if I've learned anything about a leader, being a leader, it's a humbling journey every day in your own opportunities and shortcomings and being uncomfortable. I used to think, CEOs have all the answers. Maybe some of them do. I can assure you I do not. In fact, I probably arguably have fewer answers as I progressed in my career than I maybe did before. But it's too, as I started to work with my team, and there were all these perceptions I had, and I thought, well, if I really open up to folks, is that oversharing? No, it's not about oversharing. It's about being consistent with people. I also thought, I gotta be perfect, especially as a young leader, right? I'm kind of on a short leash, I don't have the experience, or I'm sometimes working with people who, have worked in a job longer than I've been alive. They've been here. So I gotta be perfect. I also learned it's not about perfection, it's just about being honest with people. Honest when I didn't know, or what I was still trying to figure out, or what my emerging thinking was, kind of a phrase I use often when I'm still figuring something out. And then, of course, I always thought, well, what about being liked, right? I got to get people on my side. And then realized, too, well, it's not about being liked, but it's about being trusted. And people don't need you to be flawless. They just need you to be real enough to follow. So a little bit of my journey. Thanks for the great bio. But I kind of immediately shifted pretty quickly into some things I didn't expect that I would be doing. So I'm a nurse by background, graduated from the nursing program here, thought that I was going to do what I at the time thought was the really exciting nursing work, like working in the ICU or the emergency room, or maybe be a flight nurse. And the folks I work with at Fairview now would definitely tell you that we should let the other folks do that kind of work. That's not my forte. But I quickly found myself in an uncomfortable position. I graduated in May. By August, the folks in the nursing program had asked me if I would come back and be an adjunct faculty and teach an intro nursing course. Like, what do I know about that? I mean, yes, I graduated. I just got licensed, I think it was literally about 21 days before I started teaching a course. And so I kind of, got thrown into this kind of immediate position where I just got out of this program. Now I'm teaching into it. How do I show up? And kind of had all these external thoughts about how I needed to show up now as an adjunct faculty member. I also at the same time had an opportunity as I was starting my graduate degree here and then at Metro State. I got to serve on the Minnesota State Board of Trustees, so the governing body that kind of oversees all the different Min-State institutions. And so same thing, like this is a room of really accomplished people, and I'm, the 22, 23-year-old, whatever I was at the time, who's now in a part of all these meetings. Well, what expectations do they have? How should I, show up? How am I gonna, try to be relevant with all these great former, senators and, successful business people? I didn't quite know how to navigate that. And then at the same time, also started working and starting my career and really found myself within a year, moved to a leadership position with the company I started with. Again, I don't know why they hired me. I just said yes because they said $5 more an hour and I had the loans to pay. But maybe a little naive there. But I was a little clueless and kind of left, still wondering, what are people needing from me and how do I show up in all of these areas? And then to, kind of fast forward here a little bit, before I was 30 years old, never thought this would happen, was a VP and on the executive team at a large senior living company, and not that much older now as CEO. And two, at my previous role, I became COO of that same company about 2 weeks before COVID started. So two, found myself in a pretty unique situation in a new role. And how did I try to fit in? And so what I kind of learned about that is the rapid advancement, put me in these positions, put me working with people, put me in rooms where everyone looked to me for certainty. And certainly during COVID, that was true. And often, I didn't quite know myself. I felt all this pressure to have it all together. And that realization about that withholding those parts of myself, the doubts I had, the personal motivations that I have for the work that we do in senior living, And even the small stories that kind of get people energized about our work kept others at a distance. And I really particularly remember, one day I was working with an LPN on my team. She was one of those two. She had worked at that building longer than I had been alive. And she just kind of leaned over on my desk and she said, Brett, we all think you're pretty smart. I said, oh, thanks. But no, we all think you're pretty smart, but nobody knows you. Nobody knows you. You're doing really great things, but people just want to know you. And so I used to think early on that showing my emotion, my uncertainty, that would make people question my leadership, particularly when I was young. We're in the position I'm in now. I'm still fairly young. But when I started sharing what really mattered, why our mission matters to me, why I show up every day to do the work that I do, what values drive me, what I'm still figuring out, which in healthcare is a lot. I think if anybody tells you they've got healthcare figured out, they're lying. Don't listen to them. But when I said that, something shifted with people, right? When I could be vulnerable with them, when I could be authentic, people leaned in with me more. They were more present. We were able to start sharing more together. They were taking more ownership of some of the challenges that we were trying to tackle, and we were solving problems differently together. So that authenticity created connection, and ultimately that connection created trust. And I really missed that early in my career. So I've learned in leadership, all the results matter, but the way that you achieve them, the honesty, the humility, the consistency that you bring, particularly in an uncertain time. If I learned anything the last 5 years with COVID and some of the past years, it's the consistency. You got to show up the same every day in the hard times and the good times. People need to know what to expect from you, but it's that kind of work that earns the loyalty, and ultimately for the teams that you're all going to be a part of or are already now, builds the culture. So 3 things that I think from my experience I want you to take away. 1, know what you stand for. It's hard to be authentic if you don't know what your own values are. Whether you got to write those things down, whether you kind of got to know what the red lines are that you won't compromise on, whether that's integrity or curiosity or kindness. One of mine is curiosity. I think sometimes I drive my team a little nuts with that because I'm just constantly asking questions and kind of relentlessly pursuing new information. But know those things, and then check yourself. Am I aligning to those things every day? And particularly when times get tough, when you have to make really challenging decisions, when your team's well-being or individuals, in my world, their life, their well-being might be in the hands of the decisions that you're making. You really got to know what you stand for, and the people around you really have to know that too. When you trust each other, and I saw this particularly early in 2020, when we trusted each other really well because we knew where everybody stood, what we accomplished, what we were able to do in hours that would have taken months was pretty remarkable. The second one is be real in your ambition. You don't have to have every answer. Like I said at the beginning, I think I have fewer answers than I maybe have answers to. But ask better questions, admit what you're learning, particularly when you're young in your career. That authenticity will build credibility, faster than pretending. And I say this often to folks I interact with when they talk with me about my time at MSU, and I also serve on the foundation board, so I get to meet a lot of prospective donors and folks here important to the university. And I always say the best thing I learned was how to think, not what to think here. And that has served me really well in my career because I don't have every answer. My role when you get an email, you get a phone call, you get a meeting, it's usually because it's gone through many different layers of people who don't have that answer either. And so I got to be comfortable with the skills of figuring out how I get that answer. And that's okay to share that vulnerability when you're new. And then the last one, connect really before you perform with your team. You hear this often. People remember how you make them feel before they remember perhaps how smart you sounded or how great that answer was in a meeting. So whether that's in an interview, it's a group project, it's your first job, Just start with being human. People want to know you. And so you're entering a world that, on the business side sometimes rewards that speed, the polish, the executing and getting this done. Those are important things. But the leaders who make an impact are going to be the ones who lead with truth and lead with purpose. So don't just chase being impressive. I think you're already, if you're here, you're probably a pretty impressive group. But chase being known. Be that person that when you leave that team, people remember you. So I spent years trying to prove myself. And maybe it wasn't even until recently, until I let people truly kind of know me, to be authentic with them, that I became a better leader too. And honestly, I think it's made me too a better person. So if you take one thing away from today, let it be this. Authenticity isn't a trait that you find, it's a choice that you practice. And you can start that practice today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett. Our next speaker should be covering accountability. Professor Brenda Flannery is a first-generation college graduate from South Dakota who has envisioned, designed, and implemented innovative educational experiences for thousands of students in North America during the past 30 years. Dr. Flannery's doctorate in business administration is from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and her MBA and Bachelor of Business are from Western Illinois University. As an experienced higher education leader, including serving as the first female dean of the College of Business here at MSC for 12 years, she championed the development of dozens of award-winning student success programs and experiences. Her teaching, research, and publications on leadership development, experiential learning, and sustainability continue to be Dr. Flannery's passion work with learners of all ages and stages. So,
awesome. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. So some might have thought that I drew the short stick when it comes to our topics tonight because I am discussing accountability. But let me ask you, when you think of the word accountability, do you think of it as being a positive, or do you think of it as being a negative? Positive? Others? Negative? Positive? It goes both ways. It goes both ways. So I thought we would take a little dive into this construct that can be seen as positive or negative. So once I got this topic, I started to really pay attention to the news. And the word accountability was coming up a lot in the news when with the WNBA. And specifically, and you might have caught this, Nafisa Collier said that the lack of accountability was extraordinary with the leadership in the WNBA. She really called out the leadership, and a lot of this had to also do with the reffing, and there was a lot of other particulars with this. But that word accountability kept coming up over and over again. Now, I'm a behavioral scientist by nature, so, and also by training. And so whenever I am reading the news, I'm thinking about the theory behind why people do what they do. And so this really caught my eye. And what also really caught my eye was this idea that oftentimes when someone is being told that, for example, called out in the news, lack of accountability, there's like a finger pointing, right? There's this finger pointing that's calling out someone, which made me think about one of my friends who's an artist and created this sculpture of this finger pointing hand. And I went to see his show and watched others that were looking at the sculpture, and none of us wanted something specific to happen. And let me show you what that is. The name of the sculpture is Drive All Blames into One. So it's sound activated. And you can see people moving. And what you're going to start seeing is that people didn't want to have this finger pointing at them. That it felt, and I was there, and also felt like when that finger was pointing at me, like I was really uncomfortable. So I decided for my focus tonight that I was going to take a bit of a U-turn. That when we talk about accountability, oftentimes this idea that we're going to hold you accountable, that I wanted to then move that toward holding me accountable to holding we accountable. Let me dive into that a little bit. There is a specific term within accountability that is called reciprocal accountability. And I didn't really know much about this concept before a couple weeks ago, before I started really looking at it. And it's this very interesting construct that with reciprocal accountability, the responsibility is to each other. The responsibility is to our relationships. The responsibility is in the give and take that we have with each other. And so this idea of relationships, which Brett started to talk about as well, this idea of relationships came up in the news again with the WNBA about a week ago. Caitlin Clark, some of you might know her, a pretty popular WNBA player. Someone asked her about this situation, and her response to what Nafisa Collier had said is, you know, she's got a lot of good points. And then someone asked her the follow-up question, well, what do you think is most important in leadership? And here's what she said. I'd say the most important part of leadership, whether that's the WNBA, whether that's corporate America, I think it comes down to relationships. I think it comes down to relationships and really caring about the people that you surround yourself with. So really with reciprocal accountability, we're talking about relationship accountability. What it means, and this is in the literature and in the research, what relationship or reciprocal accountability means is that we have a shared vision, we have a shared goal, we have shared goals and roles and responsibilities. We share, sorry about that, we share this goal. We have a shared purpose. So what does that look like? This is what shared planning looks like. It's a process. If someone tells you that this is our plan, that's not as fun as if you create the plan together. You might have the best idea with your team. But if you just tell your team what the plan is, that lack of engagement in the planning process very likely will mean a lack of engagement in implementation. So you see the two of them here at a board working on their plan. There's engagement. There's conversation. There's a process. So this is what shared visioning planning looks like. The research also says that when we are really focused on relationship accountability, we work hard at communication. That means we listen very carefully with each other, we talk with each other, and we purposely have regular check-ins. What does that look like? It looks like this. First of all, with the conversation, it's focused. They're making eye contact. They're sitting in a way that they can be having an engaged conversation. There's a couple things missing from this photo. Electronic devices are missing, as are headphones. And that's really important in this day and age. If you're going to build a relationship with someone, you can't be tuned out from them. It's the quickest way to kill a relationship. You see that they have something to drink and they have something to eat. There's actual research that says when someone holds a warm drink, that they are more likely to agree with you. Isn't that crazy that someone did research on that? So there's research that says having food and drink and making a connection with others really matters when you're building a relationship. So that's what communication looks like. The other thing that the research has shown is that you have joy, you enjoy each other, and you enjoy the journey, the learning. You realize, and I know many of you are working on team projects. I have some students in the audience, and I know for sure that they're working on team projects. Sometimes it feels like a team project is the worst assignment you could get. Because, first of all, you don't know them, perhaps, and you're not sure if they're going to really hold up their side of the bargain. There might be some of that social loafing. But every time you work with others, it's an opportunity to learn. But it takes work to learn from each other. The other thing to enjoy is when you have those shared accomplishments and to really enjoy the relationship. One of the measures of success of a successful team is actually the depth of the relationships. And there's some great research out there on that. That is a metric of success. It's not only the task metric, but it's also the relationship metrics. So enjoying the relationship is very important to the success of a team. And this is what enjoyment looks like. It's inclusive. Everyone is engaged in the celebration. You don't have someone sitting off to the side. Again, there's a feeling of joy and happiness. You're doing something that you really enjoy together. A lot of people, and I am like this sometimes because I can be pretty task-oriented, that we don't take enough time to celebrate the good things in life. And the place where I learned about the importance of celebration was when I lived in Mexico for a year. They celebrated everything. We had a party in the office every other day. Someone was bringing in a cake. We were celebrating some birth, some promotion. And it made me realize that when I returned to the United States, I was going to celebrate more because it made life so much more enjoyable. So, a little update on our WNBA. These are 4 stories from the New York Times in the last week, a little over a week. And things are not going well. They're not having a lot of enjoyment right now with this situation. You have the commissioner who's had that finger pointed at her. Crowd boos WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert at championship celebration. The next one, I think this one was on October 3rd. Kathy Engelbert is not the WNBA's future. Soon, the commish may not even be its present. And then the NBA president who hired her, and actually she reports to him, the NBA's Adam Silver says WNBA conflict has become too personal. And then the most recent newspaper headline, get your popcorn out. WNBA's most riveting off-season begins now. And I did pull out a statement from one of these articles by the commissioner where she said, if the players don't feel appreciated and valued by the league, then I have to do better. So she's accepting that responsibility, but to be continued. I will continue to watch this case study unfold. So again, this U-turn, this idea of a U-turn, that it's not necessarily you, I need to look at me, and then I need to invest in we. And just as a confirmation about how important relationships are, this is one of my favorite studies out there. It's an 85-year-old Harvard study on happiness. For 85 years, different researchers at Harvard have been studying happiness. And I'm telling you, they've been they've been taking saliva samples. I mean, they're doing like really in-depth behavioral research. And they have found, and there was this New York Times kind of meta-analysis of what has been found as the most important aspect of happiness in life, and it's relationships. They are the most important contributor of happiness, and interestingly enough, it's, marriage is really important. There's some really great insights from marriage, but also they found that just having a connection with another person can actually improve your happiness, and believe it or not, even a stranger. I was with my students, I think it was last week, and I said I wasn't quite sure when someone had their headphones on if I could talk to them or not. And someone said, "You talk to strangers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I talk to strangers." Well, the research says it's actually good for your happiness to talk to strangers. So, again, in sum, think about accountability as we. What are we invested in the accountability, and our accountability to each other to make this work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Last up, we have Didiong Ukuenen with Achievement. He is an electrical engineering student here at MSU with experience spanning engineering design, mentorship, and leadership. He is intern at Cato Engineering, where he streamlined processes and improved efficiency, and previously worked at Apple, driving team performance and customer success. As chapter president of the National Society of Black Engineers, he grew membership from 10 members to 80 and helped secure the organization's first sponsorship. Passionate about innovation, education, and community building, Didiong brings a unique blend of technical expertise and people-centered leadership to every endeavor. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about achievement, and I just want to give it up for the other two panelists who have both outclassed me quite considerably in their achievements over time. So can we just give it up one more time for them? Awesome. So to bring it home, I want to talk about achievement, which is a very loaded term. We've talked about accountability. We've talked about authenticity. But achievement is one of those things that is nebulous. It's outside of ourselves. It's not measured in here. It's measured out there. So, to start off, I want to do a quick visualization experiment with everyone here. And I will warn you, this is one of those manifesty things that you see all the time online. So, I'll have everyone close your eyes for about 30 seconds, and I just want you to visualize. Think about yourself in your ideal form. Sometimes the buzzword on social media will say your higher self, right? Think about that person, the one that has the confidence, the one that is doing exactly what it is that you want to do in life. And for those of you who are not in your early 20s per se, think back to when you were at this stage and think about what that version of you would have thought your ideal self is. All right, so everyone have that concretely in your mind. Awesome, you can go ahead and open your eyes here. So there's two realizations that I want you all to kind of come to today. Number one is that that person is not that far away. That is a choice. You can choose to embody that throughout your life today. You can choose that right this second as you move through your life like, hey, you know what? I am that person. I'm not there yet as far as the accolades and being in that position, but I am that person, and you can choose to identify that. The second thing is that your ideal version of yourself is not real, and I can almost guarantee you that any of the people here who are not in their early 20s can attest to the fact that their version of themselves that they thought that they would be is not exactly who they are today. Maybe close, but not exactly. So keep those two ideas in your mind that are somewhat contradictory, but not quite. So, it's a little washed out on the slide here, but so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My big dream is to one day, I've actually visualized it almost to a crystal clear HD 4K, 8K vision in my head of I can see it from someone else's perspective. They're walking up behind me. I'm sitting in a director's chair, you know, the one with like the little black band going around. It says my last name on there. I'm like super buff, jacked. And, and they're asking me, oh, you know, I have this really good script idea. And I'm like, let me look at it. This is actually pretty good. You know what? Take it over to our writers and our sound guys and have them look at it. Maybe we'll run through a few things and make it happen. I have this idea in my head. It's so crystal clear to me. What is my major? My major is engineering. So why am I thinking about being in a director's chair? This is kind of what I'm getting at, where it's your ideal version of yourself doesn't even have to be 100% in the trajectory of where you're going. But we all have dreams. We all have somewhere where we want to go. When we think about achievement, there's our version of it, and then there's an external version of it that's happening all around us in our daily lives as we go through everything that we go through, right? So that brings me to kind of the core of what I want this to be about, which is dream big. Don't limit it to, hey, I chose this major, therefore I have to think of my life in this cookie cutter framework of this is all that my life is going to be. Dream way bigger than that. This photo is from Puerto Rico. I went there this summer. Never been to Puerto Rico. It was an amazing, amazing experience. Got to swim in the ocean. Got to just expand my horizon and stop thinking so small because, well, I'm going to be graduating relatively soon, and I needed to do that. I needed to get out of the box, right? Oh, that's washed out. But I'll say what the other word there says, which is don't overlook the small opportunities. Because in the reality, what is happening around you, those small opportunities are where the achievement actually happens. The big dream that you have that like one day, I don't know, I'm going to flip all my Bitcoin and be a billionaire, like whatever it is, that big dream, it's the smaller things that you do along the way that you're actually going to be recognized for. For me, I wouldn't be standing on this stage if I blocked out everything and only went for the big dream of sitting in that chair and directing movies and stuff like that. I wouldn't be here, right? I had to take the other opportunities that came in between. So, I don't have a lot of stats, but I do have a story. And I'm going to share that story with all of you today on how I got here on this stage speaking to you. So my story starts in the year 2020 when both my grandparents passed away, one after the other at the beginning of COVID. Everyone has a COVID story. This one happens to be mine. It starts with going to Nigeria, taking my last, I think it was $2,000 that I had for my job at the time, booking my flight, paying 2 months' rent, and basically, and I had just gotten let go from my job, so I took my last check, paid all these things, and then was like, I don't know what's going to happen when I come back. But I have to go do this. This is a family responsibility. So that's how my story starts. Have no idea what's going to happen next. So then I arrive, I come back to the United States, touchdown in January. I don't know how many details I want to give, but I'll give a few just to give you a perspective on where I was at mentally. I get back to the United States. I don't have a job. I start working as an Amazon delivery, yes, Amazon, Jeff Bezos' company, formerly, delivering packages. I do that for 6 months. I'm outside. I got self-help audiobooks on repeat. I'm just jumping in and out of vans, delivering packages. Not here, so if you missed your package, it wasn't me. And that's how my journey starts. The very next phase of the journey, a friend of mine says, hey, you should go over and work at Apple doing sales. And I thought to myself, I had been an Android fanboy my entire life. I had the first Google Pixel when it came out. I was like, I'm never going to work for the enemy. You can't convince me to do that. They're like, but you'd be good at it, and you'd make a lot of money. So I was like, all right, fine. Didn't take a lot of convincing. So I ended up going over to Apple. Again, this was one of these opportunities where I could have overlooked it, but I was like, you know what, I'll take a chance. Went down there and got hired on as a sales pro, which is somewhere in between sales and management. So I was training and helping out the sales team. We ended up having the most improved sales team in the world from where we started the year, where we ended the year. Out of all of the Apple stores in the world, we had the most improvement, highest improvement metric. We weren't the best, but our scores went up that drastically. We were hitting like 90 percentile often by the time I left. And they offered me, hey, why don't you stay here at Apple and work full-time? You can be a manager within a year, and you'll have all the benefits, dental, health, everything. But I had this nagging feeling, in addition to my parents also giving me a little bit of prodding as well, to say, like, maybe you should go back to school at some point. And for me, I was curious. So I'd be sitting in my car after work. I'd be going on YouTube. This was like in that dip where TikTok was just launching and I wasn't into it yet. So I was on YouTube. And I was watching videos by this guy called Veritasium, if anyone's heard of him. He's a mathematician / Bill Nye, the science guy kind of guy. And he goes over like, hey, what's the newest research, what's the newest formula that scientists haven't been able to crack in the field of physics? And let's actually look at that. Or how do you actually replicate an electrical circuit using gears from the mechanical perspective? And I'm watching all these videos, and I'm just curious, and I'm like, I have too much curiosity to sit in a store and be a manager for the rest of my life. I just can't do it. So I left. I left Apple, left the money on the table, and I decided to come back to school. Came back to school, and I got offered a position doing MathPass tutoring. So I did that first. Actually, before that, I got a job working at Caribou Coffee right across the street. Get a pumpkin spice. I think it's pumpkin spice. No, that's Starbucks. What's their? Anyways, Caribou Coffee, thank you. So started working at Caribou, worked there for about a year. I also did MathPass while I was there. And when I first touched down on campus, the very first thing that happened to me was I got offered a very small opportunity. A small group of guys were getting together, and one of the TAs was super, super passionate, and he said, hey, there's this thing called the Undergraduate Research Grant. You should be applying to it as often as you can. And he got a small group of us together. We started working on a Zigbee / Z-Wave. We were still futzing with the details once we submitted it. Essentially a smart home where we would have all of our devices working together, right? Started freshman year, just coming here, doing that. Very next thing, next year, I applied for it again. The third year, last year, I applied for the URC grant and actually got it. I got it for a project that I did in collaboration with my current employer. I'm an intern at NEDEC up in North Mankato. A small opportunity, and I saw it through to the end and didn't think of it as a small opportunity, just thought of it as, hey, let's see where this goes. I'm going to keep trying. In addition to that, I ended up getting hired at NEDEC through just going to the IEEE career fairs that are hosted here on campus. And let's see, I did MathPass before that. Oh yes, the MathPass, how that ties in is one of my first interview questions where they're like, hey, you do tutoring. Can you explain and break down for us just the basics of Circuits 1? Just take us all the way through induction and capacitance once you get into some of the, non-real numbers. And so took them through that process and boom, they actually hired me right away. And the rest is history. I've been working there for 1.5 years. So the final leg of the journey was where all of the achievements and accolades started coming in. And this part started actually from a small opportunity. My parents called me one day, and they told me to talk to one of my friends who, I'll put it like this, in the achievement category, he outclasses me quite considerably. He's already married, he's already graduated, he's got this, he's got that, master's degree, this, that, and the third, okay? And they're like, talk to him. And normally my pride would tell me, I'm not gonna talk to this guy, especially not because my parents told me to talk to him. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. So I talked to him. And he asked me one question. He said, does your university have a NSBE chapter? And I'm here in Mankato. I don't really know too much about this city before then. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna find out. So I ended up asking around, ended up meeting some students who were having their very first NSBE meeting. This would have been 2 years ago. And I went to the first NSBE meeting, very small, there were like 6 or 7 of us, and it grew a little bit from there, but pretty much stayed about that size for the whole year. And actually, if you see on the picture, it's kind of washed out. That was our former president, Mo, who was there at the start, and she, for lack of a better term, whipped us into shape. She continued to grill us on the fact that this is important, this is a big opportunity, this is huge, you don't understand how massive this is. And for the most part, everyone kind of looked at each other, shrugged, and continued to look at their phones and do whatever they wanted during the meeting times. About halfway through that year, it was about January of that year, which would have been it's 2025 now, so 2024 January. Around that time, I started to just take some time to myself. And I started thinking, what would I do if I was the president of this student org? And I started to think, like, you know, the current president's kind of harsh, no shade to her, but I was like, I would try to alleviate that pressure because we're all engineering students and school's hard enough as it is. Sure enough, fast forward a few months, a small opportunity came to actually run for president. And I was like, you know what, I'll do it, sure. And ended up getting voted in. And then over the course of the next year, we proceeded to get all of these different accolades. We ended up getting RSO of the year last year, which would have been the year of 2024 to 2025. We ended up growing from 8 students to 80 students through very, very rigorous guerrilla marketing on campus. We were notably the first student org to table that year, the first day that the International Students Welcome Week happened on campus. We were there to receive them. And all of those things kind of played into the large achievements that our student organization made. But again, I want to get back to the point of, I don't get there if I don't take some of these smaller opportunities along the way as they surface. And this isn't to say just take every single opportunity that comes your way, because we live in 2025 in the AI multiverse. There are scams aplenty, so definitely use your discernment. But don't pass up opportunities because you think they're too small. That's kind of what I'm getting at. This one's supposed to say takeaways. That's why there's takeaway. There. So I actually want to give you all one final anecdote that isn't actually directly from my life, but it's through a friend of mine. I have a friend who is what he does is he runs a business acceleration LLC. He actually worked for the company Startup. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it, but he worked for that company for a little bit, and he has a very, very impressive mind. I'm always impressed when he says things to me. And so the last time I was speaking with him, he said something to me that really stuck with me, and I want to leave that with all of you today. He said this. He said, I've gotten to the point where I'm fed up with not having enough of an impact in the world, and I'm going to do something about it. And that sat with me because he's done so much already, and I thought, well, man, like you're already doing a lot. But he just said that one statement. I'm tired of not having enough of an impact on my community, on my family's lives, on my friends, on the campus that I'm a part of, on the student orgs that I'm a part of. I'm tired of not having enough of an impact. And that motivated me. That relit the fire under me, because I was already, I'm graduating this semester, so I was like, it's time to kick my feet up. But when he said that, I was like, even the impacts that I have made, was it enough? Could I do more? And that's something I want to leave with all of you today. So, as a final point, dream big. And if that means getting out of your comfort zone in order to kind of change your way of thinking, I highly, highly recommend doing that. This last photo is actually from my cousin, who I went out to visit right before I quit the Apple job. She lives out in New York. This is in Jamaica, Queens. And I witnessed her friends moving from a $2,000 a month apartment to a $3,000 a month apartment, right? And I'm just sitting there like, I could take this Apple job and stay exactly where I am, or I could dream big. And I could start taking up these opportunities along the way and make the world my oyster. And so I want to leave that with all of you today. Do that. Dream big. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our three presenters. We have a couple minutes for questions, so I'm going to first open it up to the audience. Don't be shy. If you have a question for our presenters, please go ahead and you can step up to these two mics here. Anyone? Any takers? 7 up? Perfect.
Brett, I heard you say when you were talking about being on the Minnesota board that you felt out of place at 23 to be with so many competent and experienced professionals. How did you overcome that, almost like an imposter syndrome?
Yeah, good question, and I don't know maybe how the other two feel too, but I think imposter syndrome is something I live with every day too, so it doesn't go away. I think in that I just kind of framed, and thought about what's my role here to represent, and really at the time it was to represent, the student perspective. And so just like everybody else in that room, whether they're representing a congressional district or they're an at-large member, that I had a perspective to represent too. And so while my experience was perhaps more limited than their professional experience, and some of the achievements that those folks had. See, I'm going to weave this together. It was my accountability too to represent, the perspective that I had. And being a recent student, being a recent undergraduate student, being a graduate student gave me perspectives that, ultimately impacted decisions that were made that affect you today too, even though that was 10 plus years ago. And so I think once I got comfortable that my perspective is just as valid as, former senator and CEO and all of that, I felt comfortable with that. And it adds value to the conversation, because if I didn't speak up, it's a big piece that's missing in that conversation. So,
Brenda, any thoughts on that?
I can add to that a little bit, because I had a very similar scenario pop up speaking to the company that I currently work for about sponsoring my student work. Making the proposal was easy enough, but when I actually had to stand in front of the my manager's manager, as well as the financial manager for the entire factory, and I had to say, hey, we're asking for a small loan of $3,000 to help our RSO, and I have a pitch deck that I have to assemble and put together. You start to feel at a certain point, quote unquote, outclassed by the people that you're around, and you think, they're not going to take me seriously. But I think to Brent's point, if you don't speak up, if you don't actually get out there, that's just one fewer voice that they get to hear from. And oftentimes we draw this divide between the haves and the have-nots, and the people who have the power to affect change and the people who oftentimes feel like their voices are unheard. And in those moments, by you speaking up, you are bridging that gap, and you are kind of bringing you're bringing voice to the voiceless, being yourself and people like you in those situations. So that's what I would say.
Any thoughts?
Sure. I'll add a little bit to that as well because, like Brett said, imposter syndrome is not uncommon. It's actually quite common for individuals that are in roles that you would think that they have all the confidence in the world. I think with myself, it was always really thinking about, and really Brett said this, I think, really, really well, was my role was to serve others. And because that was what my role was, I was stepping into the role. One of my mentors who just passed away, she was the longest serving dean in the United States. Dean Jane Early, she was our Dean of Arts and Humanities here at the university. And she did she gave a bunch of us women deans a personal conference. And she talked about actually saying to herself before she would walk onto campus that morning, and today the role of dean is being played by Jane Early. And that's kind of how she would psych herself up, to be stepping into a difficult situation, to say, I have the privilege of this role and I'm going to step into it even though I may be shaking in my boots. And so a lot of times with the roles that you have the opportunity and the privilege to be in, you embrace it, even though you may be shaking in your boots.
Awesome answers. So I think we have one question. Anyone?
All right, well, I have no idea if it can be heard, but...
We can hear you, Tyro.
Wonderful. So my question mostly is, when you are doing advocacy and you're promoting for better change and you're talking to someone who has more experience and they are giving you reasons why what you're suggesting isn't going to work, even though you know it is, what do you do in those kinds of situations? How do you either amp yourself up, convince them otherwise? What is normally what you might do in that kind of situation?
Any takers?
Go ahead. Sure. So I think one of the things that I do, and it actually relates to kind of the last point that you can do too, is get good at asking questions. And I think sometimes if you can frame the curiosity, frame questions, sometimes the point you make is, and I love doing this, but if I can elicit an awkward pause in an individual who thinks they maybe have all the answers with a really good question, that just reframes things a little bit. So one of my pieces of advice would be just practice that muscle of asking some different questions, and maybe it's not always about what you present or the pitch that you make, but it's reframing the context of the problem or things differently to them through some questions.
Yeah, and I would follow up with that saying too that the more that you keep them talking, the more that you're learning about. And so asking them the questions means that they are divulging to you what their perspective or an angle where you might be able to find a common ground. So I think listening, asking great questions and listening will get you further along in being able to come to a common ground and make some progress.
Yeah, I think you two both summed it up pretty well. The other thing that I would just add is don't be afraid to expend all the resources at your disposal. So if you're getting a no from one place, don't be afraid to go some other places, even if it's in the same building, to say hey, maybe I need to divert this somewhere else. But yeah, I think asking questions, remaining curious, and keeping your curiosity alive, and not just let the shutdown turn you into a defeatist mentality of oh, well, they said no, that's it. Still figuring out, well, maybe there is a different way that we can approach this situation. Oftentimes will get you to those results. Yeah.
Cool. Brett, Brenda, Eddie, Thank you so much. Let's give her, I guess, one more round of applause. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you to those who are joining us here in person and virtually. If you've not already checked in, please do so using the QR code near the entrances on or near the table outside. And please join us for a networking, social, and appetizer buffet down the hall in the Student Activities Office, which is that direction. And just an FYI, our breakout rooms start at 7:30 sharp. So yeah, thank you very much.